They stepped out of the kitchen and into a hallway that looked rather familiar. A metal grate stretched from wall to wall. Beyond it were 2 elevators and the entrance to the kitchen. They had entered the kitchen from one door and come out the other. That meant their map of the ship's interior was accurate. They laid out the map in front of them and began to discuss their next step. There were 4 possible routes: A, B, C, and D. First, A and B. A and B both seemed to connect to an L-shaped room, over the tube doors that lead to the room were both locked and could not be opened. Well, that narrows it down. Next route was C. This goes all the way to the main staircase. That means it's door 5, one of the numbered doors. Then do you think we can meet up with the other 4 after this hallway? No, I don't think we will. Why not? Look, there, by the stairs. See how the gate is open? When we went to the kitchen, it was closed. But it's open now. What do you think that means? They opened it, most likely. Then if we take Route C, we're going backwards. That'd be pointless. And that means... All 4 looked at the map. Route D it was. They all looked at the staircase, its lazy curve leading down deeper into the ship. Route D then. D it is. Yep, Route D. Then we're set. They jogged down the stairs until they reached the C deck. Just to be sure they kept going to check the deck beneath. Yeah, just like I thought, Deck D is totally underwater, just like the bottom of the central staircase. The water gazed back at them, its smooth surface like a great mirror. As ominous as it was, Junpei took at least some comfort in the fact that the level hadn't gone up much since the last time he'd seen it. They turned back to C deck. It didn't take them long to find the 2 elevators in front of the stairs. They looked identical to the elevators on the top floor, with one exception. These elevators had a card reader on the wall between them. On the card reader was a strange mark. Hey, look, it's Lotus's symbol. Ah, see, it's the woman's symbol with a thorn on it. That seems like... Man, Junpei. Lotus had taken hold of Junpei's hair. She began to shake him violently, and he thought he heard a low growl coming from her throat. Such violence. Junpei began to wonder if she was not the devil itself. With an uncomfortable smile, June spoke up. This is the Mercury symbol. The thorn symbolizes the wings on Hermes' staff. Hermes, herpes, whatever. Can't get this thing to work. These elevators aren't going anywhere. In other words, we need a keycard with the Mercury symbol on it. Probably. He gave up on the elevator and returned to the stairs. A hallway stretched out to the left. A great many doors lined both sides of the hallway. They weren't sure how many, but certainly enough to be discouraging. If we try and search all these, the sun's going to go down before we're done. We've done half of them. I think the sun already set. I have a feeling the ship is the only thing that's going to be going to go down anytime soon. That's even worse. Well, we can come back to this hallway later. Let's check the hallway on the other side, shall we? Frustration and fear building, they walked back to the stairs. To their right was a small hallway. Quickly they headed into it. It was approximately the same size as the alcove in front of the stairs. The hallway led toward the stern, and at its end was a set of double doors. Let's open it. Junpei nodded and grabbed the door. Grabbed the one closest to him. Grabbed the door. Grabbed the one closest to him. He gave it a small tug and felt it move. It was unlocked. Thrilled to have found an unlocked door, he threw it open. Junpei didn't know what to make of what he saw. Hold on. Sleepy time. He simply stood, unable to speak. The other simply stared, open-mouthed. After a few long moments, Santa managed to speak. What is this? A massive room stretched out in front of them, more a cavern than a room. Its vastness was oppressive, and it bore down on the four companions. It was not empty, however. The entire room was filled with lines upon lines of beds. There were simple things, little more than pipe and thin mattresses. Is this a hospital? He had at last been able to put a name to the harsh scent that pervaded the room. The room swam with a harsh, biting smell of antiseptic. In the center of the room were shelves stacked with medicine, and a number of medical devices, the function of which Junpei did not know. More importantly, however, on the back wall of the room were 4 doors. 3 of them were emblazoned with large single-digit numbers made with thick red paint. The door on the left was labeled 3. The second door from the left had no number, but the third had been given a 7. And the rightmost door had an 8. There could be no doubt, they were numbered doors. It did strike Junpei as strange, however, that the door between 3 and 7 should be blank. What, he wondered, could it mean? Let's take a look at the doors. Yes, that sounds like a good plan. Junpei headed toward the doors, weaving his way between the beds. He started with door 3 on the left, and moved to the right until he reached door 8. It's no use. Well, of course. If it was that easy to open these doors, what would be the point of the nonary game? We have to activate the red, or the numbered doors won't. Wait a minute. What's wrong? Look, the display on the red. There's nothing on it. Huh? Don't you remember? The red at the central staircase. No one was inside it. It said vacant. Oh yeah, you're right. This one. There's nothing on it, right? I wonder if it's broken. Only one way to find out. It didn't respond. All 4 took turns placing their hands over the red, but it refused to respond. They pulled at the lever, and still it did nothing. As they soon discovered, it wasn't only the red for door 8 that was behaving strangely. The red on door 7 also refused to respond, and door 3 was similarly silent. None of them would respond. What did it mean? I knew it. They're broken. Zero sure sucks at maintenance. No, that's impossible. You really think Zero, who prepared all of this, would make such a stupid simple mistake? Maybe, but that doesn't explain why this thing ain't working. It was at that moment that they heard a voice from behind them. I believe the bottom of the device has been removed. They spun around to see. Sup, Snake? Snake! Snake! It was more than just Snake. Ace, Clover, and Seven quickly filed into the room as well. Although they were glad to see one another, it wasn't terribly surprising that they had. If it had been the other way, the other party, who'd opened the gate in front of the kitchen, it wasn't unreasonable that they'd bump into one another eventually. The rest of Snake's team, however, did look rather surprised. How? How did you end up here? Funny story. I was going to make dinner for y'all, but we got trapped in an ice room. A freezer, as you peasants call them. After a moment of silence and surprise, everyone suddenly began to talk, desperate to exchange information. They talked about the rooms they'd been through and how they'd ended up in the same place. Of course, none of it was very useful information, but that hardly mattered. They were happy to simply see one another again. Although the level of cheer varied greatly from person to person, each one of them was wearing some manner of smile, almost as though they had already forgotten about the death of the ninth man. R.I.P. in peace, Birdman. No, thought Junpei. Perhaps that wasn't it. Perhaps thoughts of his death were what drove them to smile at one another. Not in a morbid or hateful way, no. The ninth man had died, but they were still alive, and that was something to be happy about. Sort of simple, uncomplicated joy, Junpei thought. The joy of being alive. Still alive. He felt sorry for the ninth man, but more than anything, Junpei was just happy to be alive. And there you have it, our half of the story. His part finished, Ace fell silent. For a moment, Junpei was silent and thought, and he spoke. Okay, let me see if I've got all this straight. When you guys were here, the bases for the Reds were already gone, and you looked all over this room, but you couldn't find anything. So you figured that there might be something in the hallway with all the doors. So you went and had a look. Yeah. And while you were looking around, you heard voices. Uh-huh. So you followed the voices, came back here. Indeed. And that was how we found you. Junpei examined the 3 Reds again, just in case. On the bottom of each was a long, thin gap. It looked like a slot for something. Probably something electronic. Well, this isn't good. If the Red isn't active, we can't keep going. Well, what about the hallway over there? Isn't there anywhere else we can go? No, there isn't. There are plenty more hospital rooms, but nothing else. Hospital rooms? That's what's behind all these doors? Yes. There are a number of individual rooms in addition to this large one. There was a door at the end of the hallway, but it was locked. There was an astrological symbol engraved near the keyhole, however. I was unable to get a good feel of it. I believe it was a symbol for Jupiter. Not again. Those things are everywhere. I wonder what they all mean. For a moment everyone was silent, deep in thought. While we're asking what things mean. What's the deal with this room? I mean, I thought this was a cruise ship, but I can't imagine a cruise ship would have a hospital like this. Of all people, it was 7 who answered, and with calm confidence. Well, I figured it's probably a hospital ship. Chances are it's the Gigantic. The Gigantic? Rhymes with Titanic. Somewhat. Junpei looked confused. So did everyone else. What is this Gigantic? 7 knit his brows for a moment, then began to explain. The Gigantic. He explained that she had been a sister ship to the Titanic. Built in the early 20th century, the Titanic had 2 sister ships, who were identical to one another in nearly every aspect. The Gigantic was said to be one of them. She was initially intended to be a passenger liner, like the Titanic, but soon after the ship was launched, the First World War began, and she was pressed onto duty by the British Navy as a hospital ship. Sometime later, the Gigantic was damaged by a German mine in the Aegean Sea. She managed to run aground after the incident, and consequently was not sunk. What then happened to the Gigantic after her fateful encounter in the Aegean Sea? One theory ran that a man named Lord Gordian purchased her. Lord Gordian, it seemed, had been one of the few survivors of the Titanic tragedy, and that trauma had turned him into an obsessive collector of all things related to the Titanic. As his obsession deepened, he began to desire the Titanic itself. That, of course, was impossible. The Titanic lay at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. The gigantic, however, had not suffered such a dire fate, and as she was identical to her sister ship, she caught Lord Gourdain's eye. So you're saying this Lord Gourdain brought this ship? Yeah, at least I think I am. That's impossible. No way we're on the same boat. That's almost 100 years old. Pipe down. Just pay attention. What, that's it? Well, have you got any proof? Proof? Proof that this ship is really the gigantic. Well, the ship's got stuff that's like the Titanic and the hospital ship. So I just figured. For goodness. Don't tell me that's your only reason. No, I've got more. I mean... Seven looked around desperately, doing anything to avoid meeting Lotus's piercing stare. He scratched his head for a moment, then gave up. Finally, he opened his mouth. I don't know. Lotus sighed and shook her head. I guess your memory isn't back yet, is it? Yeah, sorry about that. Hey. Wait a minute. Memory isn't back. Junpei was, he felt, legitimately shocked by what seemed to be new and very important information. Everyone else, however, seemed unimpressed. In fact, they all looked at Junpei as though he had something very strange. Said something very strange. He decided to revise his attitude for the next question. Wait, was I the only one that didn't know? Everyone nodded. Why? Oh yeah, I guess I didn't tell you, huh? I told the rest of them before we ran into you on the stairs. I told them I couldn't remember a thing from before I woke up. What? Then almost as if to save Junpei from further embarrassment. A bell began to ring from far away. It sounded as though it was the clock at the main stairway. Junpei counted each chime carefully. 10, 11, 12. It's midnight, and we've still got 6 hours left, right? We don't have any time to screw around. Let's get going. I gotta find the missing parts for the Reds. What do you mean, find? How on earth do you propose we do that? You've looked everywhere in this room. That only leaves one place to look. One? Well, I guess that's not really right. Wait. Don't tell me you mean we need to search all the other rooms. Don't freak out. We already searched 4 of them. 4 of them. Nice. We just have to split up the rest between the 8 of us. If each person does 6 rooms, it'll be 48 rooms, right? So there are 48 rooms left? Her earlier experiences had apparently not encouraged Lotus to trust 7. 7 scratched his head awkwardly. I don't know. After a little more discussion, they split up and headed toward the rooms to begin searching them. Junpei was chosen to search the rooms on the starboard side, moving from fore to aft. They also determined that they would return to report their findings the next time the clock sounded the time. When it did, they would meet back in the large central room full of beds. If, during their search, any one of them were to locate the missing components, they were to yell for the others. If this strategy failed, they'd return to discuss their options later. The details decided, they left to begin their searching. Out into the hallway they went, each of the rooms they'd been assigned. However, from far away, Junpei heard the bell ring. It did so only once. It was 1 a.m. He jogged through the entrance of the large hospital room to find 6 of the others already there. A Santa, Clover, June, 7, and Lotus. They had gathered in front of the door number 8. Or perhaps to be accurate, they had gathered in front of the red next to the door number 8. Had one of them found the missing piece? What happened, guys? It was June who answered him. Junpei, look. She was pointing at the red. He pushed through the others until he stood in front of it. Immediately he knew what she meant. The display in front of the red read vacant. Junpei sighed. Come on, guys, who was it? I thought we were supposed to yell if we found it. Well, Junpei wondered why she was hesitating. The others looked as confused as June, but kept their mouths shut. What's with you guys? They all knew something he did, and Junpei wasn't about to leave things that way. Finally, Lotus frowned and spoke. Well, that's the thing. We don't know. You don't know? When I got back, it was already like this. There was no one else here. That means I was the first one back, but the missing parts were already back in the red. Junpei looked at the bottom of the red again just to make sure. The slot that had been open at the bottom was now covered with metal. Clearly, whatever had been missing had been returned. What about the other two? They're the same. Junpei quickly examined the other two boxes. Satisfied that they were also repaired, but still very confused, he returned to the others. Alright, I just want to be sure here. Nobody has any idea what happened here, right? Ace and June nodded silently. Seven raised his hands as if to say, not me, and Santa just shrugged. Only Clover lowered her head and did nothing. Huh? Wait a minute. That wasn't what he noticed. Where's Snake? Junpei swept his eyes across the room a second time, but Snake was nowhere to be seen. Does that mean he found them? I have no idea. There's nothing to suggest it, but nothing to suggest he didn't either. I don't suppose we'll know until we can ask him in person. Well, whatever he did or didn't do, he's pretty late. What is he up to? Maybe he's lost. Yeah, well, that seems likely. Dude can't see. I don't know how he gets around in the first place. Clover raised her head. No, that's impossible. Suddenly she was shouting. Yeah, my brother's blind, but he's got really great hearing. He can get around as well as anyone who can see. So he couldn't get lost. That's impossible. Clover had started to shake, and the knuckles of her hands had gone white. She spun around, but before she did, Junpei noticed tears welling up in her eyes. I'm going to go look for him. The words were barely out of her mouth when she began to run. Hey, hold on, Clover, wait. Junpei cried out to her, but he was too slow. She kept going, and before anyone else could react, she was gone. What should we do now? Well, the red is working now. No, we're not leaving two people behind. We should go look for them. This ain't good. Oh yes, what an excellent idea. We just wasted a bunch of time looking for some piece of electronic junk. Now let's waste some more by looking for a couple of idiots. You can remain here if you must, but there's no time. We've only 5 hours left. Junpei and the others nodded to one another and took off at a run. In front of the stairs that led to B-Deck, they decided to split up. They quickly assigned search areas and went their separate ways. Soon only 2 of them were left. Those 2 were Junpei and June, who had been a few steps behind the others. Alright, we should go too. Let's go. But where should we start? Let's see. Where to indeed. Figure this all out next time.